Welcome to the Putback. I'm Ian Begley, SNY's NBA insider. I have two great guests. We got Steve Popper, longtime beat writer from Newsday. He's been covering the Knicks for a while. You know him already, and you probably already know Jonathan Macri, Knicks Film School. He and the crew do a great job over there. Newsletter, podcast, YouTube. You got to subscribe if you are not already subscribed. But gentlemen, let's get right into it because the Knicks last night beat the Spurs, slowed down Victor Wembanyama in a big way. Mitchell Robinson was in the middle of all of that. Steve, what have you seen from Robinson so far this year? What is he doing to take this next leap?
I think just what you say about next leap, it's continued development. It's just every year he seems to get a little bit sharper. We remember early in his career, he was already a defensive force, but he was chasing every block. He's become a much smarter defender, I think. He's not among the league leaders in block shots this year. Dominating offensive rebound, the numbers aren't quite there, but defensive rebounding too. And I think what you see is deflections and deterrence. I think he's become a force that guys don't want to go in against. And you can see the one time early in the game yesterday when Wembanyama faced him up one-on-one about 10 feet out on the left side. Just Mitch didn't blink, nothing fazed him, and he threw up an air ball from 10 feet. I think it's just an impressive sort of anchor to the defense this year. And look, they're I think number 2 in the league in defensive rating this year, and he's the biggest part of it, I think.
Jonathan, in honor of Mitch, I'm going to put up a shot clock for this answer, but can you talk a little bit about, over the last 5 years, you've been watching him closely. How have you seen him develop over the last 5 years? And for you, what's most surprising right now?
Consistency. Consistency quarter to quarter, half to half, game to game, week to week. I mean, the talent was evident from, what was it, like his 10th NBA game or something where he went out and had like 8 or 9 blocks against the Magic. Like, we always knew that there was a ceiling there, that if he was able to tap into everything and just, again, bring it consistently on a regular basis, that he could get to. But because of, as we were kind of joking about before we started filming, he's kind of a quirky guy. He has an interesting personality. You didn't know if he was ever going to be able to tap into those talents on a regular basis. And now he's arguably, not even arguably, he has been the most consistent Knick, I think, through 8 games. Teams do not want to go down low against him, and because he creates something of a force field around the rim, it allows their perimeter defenders I'll finish up my last sentence. It allows their perimeter defenders to really have a little bit more leeway out around the arc, guarding perimeter guys, behind the line and everything. So he makes their whole team go.
There's no doubt. And, I think for a long time now, we've talked about player development with the Knicks, whether it was predating Steve Mills and Phil Jackson. It was maybe Glenn Grunwald. They got some young guys. They were talking about player development. It's been such a buzzword in the NBA for obvious reasons. But now we're looking at this Knicks team, and we're talking about Mitchell Robinson. We're talking about R.J. Barrett. We're talking about Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes. Is it fair to say, based on what we've seen, that this group has done a pretty good job developing their young talent?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you look at this season, this summer, what the plan was run it back. Dante DiVincenzo, the only big addition. But I think that's what the buzz. Look, everybody talks about trading R.J. Barrett. For years he's been the kind of guy that you offer up in a deal, and maybe last summer they almost did go, pull the trigger on that. To me, you got a 23-year-old guy who already has averaged 20 points a game, is a solid defender, not a great defender, but a solid defender, and most of all, what you have in him as a guy who every day, good days, bad days, never gets too high, never gets too low. In New York, there's something to be said for that. I think there's a lot of guys that can handle it. R.J. Barrett is like the blueprint for a guy who can handle New York. And I think we've seen him grow. We've seen Mitchell Robinson stop kind of being, a guy who thinks he's going to be a three-point shooter in the league or kind of be an offensive creator. He's kind of, finally bought into what Thibodeau wants him to do every play offensively, running to the rim, drawing defenders, offensive rebounding, the defense, being just a solid guy instead of spectacular shot blocker. I think you can point to Thibodeau and just say, people talk about him with, young players. I think he's gotten a lot out of these guys. And, Grimes is the one we'd like to see more opportunity, but it's hard when you're playing in a lineup with Jalen, Julius, and RJ.
Yeah, I mean, when's the last time this organization drafted players in 3 consecutive drafts and actually did trade one or more of them before they actually had a chance to reach something close to their full potential? I mean, I think before my time here on this earth, and quickly, year 4, Barrett, year 5, Mitchell Robinson, year 6. The improvement arc has not been the same for all of them. I think quickly kind of came in as a guy who, contributed to winning basketball right away and has kind of taken incremental steps each step of the way. Mitch kind of, similar, but for him it was more ups and downs. And RJ, and Steve just alluded to it, and they maybe came close to trading him a year ago. A lot of people called for them to trade him, including me, because I was really disappointed. I just didn't really feel like the production was there for a former number 3 overall pick. And yet now I don't know if you want to call it making the leap, but what we're seeing from him, it does, and I know we're going to get into this later, I think it does change the trajectory a little bit. I think the front office deserves credit. I think the coaching staff deserves credit. They have 3 top 100 NBA players that, if you told me any of those 3 was going to at some point move into the top 50, top 30, 40 in the case of maybe RJ, or even quickly, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, that's a really good place for an organization to be. It's a healthy place for an organization to be. It's how you're supposed to do it, and then you supplement those moves with other things.
Just sticking with RJ right now, you guys mentioned previous summer, Donovan Mitchell. I mean, there were people, in there in the front office, I don't know, decision makers, not decision makers, that were very, very keen on moving RJ for Donovan Mitchell. And so it's so interesting how so many things have to fall into place perfectly for a team to have success. You move him and who knows what you're losing. You bring in Donovan Mitchell, who knows how that goes. But I do think too, like, the idea that he approaches his craft in such a mature way. And Steve, you touched on, guy just being able to handle New York. He gets it. I think his parents actually started working with him early on like how to talk to the media, how to do a press conference. And he's so polished with us. I mean, Steve and I have tried for 5 years now to get him to say something interesting, and he's not doing it. He's not taking the bait, and to his credit, he is good. And he's actually wanted to do the media. He wanted to be the guy doing media for the Knicks after games. Nobody wants to do that, but he wanted to do it, and I think he takes that on as a responsibility for one of the faces of this franchise. So even things off the court like that, I think RJ brings a lot of value, maybe in areas that we don't see every day.
Yeah, you think, look, Ian, we've both been around long enough with the Knicks. The chaos rules for decades here. Mm-hmm. And when you look at stuff happening, people talk about, trade for this star, trade for that star. You look at guys like Harden, look at the Damian Lillard situation. You haven't had that with the Knicks, and there are guys who could want more playing time, who could want better opportunity. Nobody says the wrong thing around here, which is a real change from what it's been for decades. And try as we might, maybe to create a story. I tell the Knicks this all the time, that the dumbest thing they ever did was not having the press conference for Jalen Brunson. Because Jalen Brunson, I'd rather put him up there than a presidential candidate. He never says the wrong thing. Maybe Josh Hart, in his joking manner does, but it's they're a team that is sort of taken what Thibodeau teaches, and they're boring almost, but in a good way. And I think that's such a change that kind of gets unnoticed here in New York.
I want to say, too, that when Steve says say the wrong thing, what he's really saying is be authentic and say something interesting and provide some insight. Sometimes we'll get that from some guys, but usually they stick to the script, just trying to get better every day, focused on the next game, daily improvement, and that's what you get.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely can hear echoes of Thibodeau in many of the comments. We're only focused on the next game, and our next opponent is the one that only matters. It doesn't matter. We're not looking at the playoffs. We don't care about expectations outside, all that.
I hate to belabor this, John. I'm coming to you right now, but I want to say that Tibbs is so good that we could ask him about something that might be controversial, like injury update or a player getting into it with a coach, whatever, and he will listen to the question. It looks like he's going to answer your question, but he pivots immediately into a totally different subject, talking about defensive rating, talking about turnovers, talking about rebounding. Yeah. It's amazing. It is a strong skill, and he has perfected it. But all right, enough inside media talk. John, I want to know from you, do you think, you touched on it a little bit earlier, do you think this changes the Knicks' trajectory if RJ sustains, he's not going to sustain this shooting clip, is around where he is shooting, is passing the ball the way he's passing the ball, and doing what he's done so far these first 8 games?
Yeah, I mean, you just said it. The shooting's going to come down. I forget what the number is now. I think he's shooting like 47% from three or something absurd. That'll come down. At the same time, he's actually shooting worse from 2-point range right now than he was last season. But the areas that you care about around the rim and floater range, both of those are pretty strong. It's just he hasn't hit anything outside of 10 feet inside the arc. So you figure all that'll stabilize the overall efficiency where it's at right now. And that I'm including free throw shooting in that because that's something that has been a little bit of a bugaboo now, for 4 years. He's hitting his free throws. If the efficiency stays where it is and we're just getting – and again, none of this is revolutionary, right? Because like we've seen him make good passes before. We've seen him make good decisions. We've seen him defend before. We've seen him do all these things in little bits. He's putting it all together now. For me, it's the decision-making that's most important, and it relates to what your question is, like how does it change the trajectory? If you have a guy out there that no matter who you put him on the floor with, whether it's one other superstar or two other stars or whatever the case may be, and he's just going to consistently make the right play, which is all he's done this year. So he just made the right play. That's a guy you could rely on, provided that they can knock down open shots behind the arc. That's why, we tend to get so deep into this stuff and make it so complicated. At the end of the day, if you're a perimeter player in the league, you got to knock down open threes. He's doing that. So that is important, but all the other stuff together, it makes RJ easier to envision as a fit in a lot of different combinations as, the prototypical big wing that we've always wanted him to be.
Yeah, I think two things. One thing you mentioned, Ian, was the passing. They were shooting so bad the first, 6-7 games of the year that we almost forget that they were moving the ball really well. RJ has been seeing guys in a way that he hasn't maybe before. And I think it's a continuation of confidence in the playoffs from FIBA World Cup. Julius is making the right pass in a lot of circumstances. And just they weren't hitting shots. So things looked worse than they maybe were. I think they're playing the right way. And one more thing on RJ, we talk about his fit in that starting lineup. You look at like a game like the Clipper game, that fourth quarter, when he's with that second unit and he's sort of one of the main offensive options with Quickly, but he's running the floor and Dante and Hart, are just in every passing lane. It just seems like he hits a whole nother level in that you can kind of see where he could be, a 25-point a game scorer if he was playing that kind of game, that kind of lineup more often.
Yeah, no doubt. And now we're going to hit my buddy Matt Spenley. You probably know him from the Knicks wall. We poached him. We're lucky to have him here at SNY, and he's got a fan question for us. Matt, what's up?
All right, we got a fan question, but first I got a comment from Frizzy on YouTube. Says, Ian looks like he's about to write a script at a coffee shop. Talking about your look today. Ian, you have any thoughts on that for Frizzy?
Yeah, tough morning this morning. Technology-wise, from an emotional standpoint, it's been a little rocky. So
that's why we love the putback. We get a little behind the scenes from Ian. We love it.
Very similar thought I had, but I thought it was more like working on his resume.
Listen, we'll take all ideas. All ideas are welcome. All right. We have a comment that is asking about Quentin Grimes from Triple M. Has he got off to a disappointing start? I mean, shooting 36% from three. I think Grimes, a lot of times, if he's making shots, it feels like he's playing great. If he's not, it feels like he isn't. But I know that there had been a lot of expectations from the fan base. I think that he might have more responsibility within the offense. So, John, what do you think about Grimes in the first 8 or so games here?
You just said the number that I was going to bring up. He's shooting 36% from three. He's taking 5.5 attempts a game. He's playing about 25 minutes. He is a guy. It's interesting to me because I look, I get it. The usage is what it is, but he's one of the few players on the Knicks that can bring an immense amount of value, even if they never touch the ball. So just him being out there with the other three ball dominant starters has value. Him being an outlet, him being a guy who's going to have a quick trigger. The only times I get bothered with Grimes is where he gets the ball and he has a shot, he has a look, and he doesn't take it. But even that, I think it's all part of the process. We've seen him be a little bit more creative with the ball and a few opportunities this year that have been impressive. Look, that sort of player archetype to me, if your coaching staff isn't specifically game planning to get them more looks, it's just kind of going to be a flow of the offense thing where one night he'll get 10 threes like he did against Milwaukee, and another night, like last night, against the Spurs, he'll get 4. He also only played 19 minutes, but that's part of the roster construction. It's like, who you taking minutes from? I mean, I know these guys have been talking about it all summer. The Knicks have a lot of talent, and Grimes is good, but so is Josh Hart and DiVincenzo, and obviously Quickly and RJ. So it's a tough spot for a young player to be in. Maybe it speaks to the fact that there's another move down the line that they could make. But I for right now, am I worried? No, I'm not worried.
To speak to Grimes and just increasing the offense a little bit, I mean, I think in years past when he has handled the ball, people with the team didn't want him doing that. They got on him about handling the ball. So it's in the past, it's kind of been damned if you do, damned if you don't. And when you're sharing a starting lineup with RJ Barrett, Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, you're just not going to see the ball a lot. So I think if you want to give Quentin Grimes more shots, more usage, you put him in that second unit where he can get the ball, he can make plays off the dribble more organically. And if you're content with where he is right now, you keep him in the starting lineup and he'll hit shots. I think he's going to hit more shots over the course of the season. He's proved that over his short career, and he'll defend. So he'll give you that. It's just a matter of what you want from Quentin Grimes. I think that he can give you more than he's showing right now, just based on, talking to him, talking to people around him. I think there's more there. Maybe the Knicks don't need it, though, given this roster construction, but just something to keep an eye on. Steve, where are you on Quentin?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, look, part of it is we don't notice it because it's almost like when you don't notice an umpire or a referee because you're doing the right thing. He takes on every game the best perimeter offensive threat. And he does it silently, and he's really good at it. So he's filling a huge role already. And look, we saw, I forget, I think it was the game in Boston in the preseason. If those guys aren't there, if he's with the second unit, I think that game he put up about 12 3-pointers. He is a dangerous offensive player, but it's not the time right now where they need him to be that. There are going to be nights, and I think I don't even worry about the percentage because when you're, taking 3-4 shots a game, it's just not conducive to being a good shooter. I think he's got to get more opportunities, and I think they will as they go along. And look, at some point in the year, there's going to be an injury. There's going to be a change in the rotation. Something's going to happen. It always does. I think there are a lot of guys giving up right now sort of what their ideal role is. And, we worried about how it would fit. I think it fits really well, and whoever's got the hot hand or whoever's defending well, whoever's the best matchup, that's who Thibodeau's going with down the stretch. There's been a lot of days where it's Dante is finishing games, and he's been tremendous, defensively. It's just another option for them. And I think Quentin, again, he's young and he's doing what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, it's interesting because these guys are human, right? So if everyone can stay bought in, and if guys like that triumvirate of Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, Quentin Grimes, if they could just not care about minutes and finishing games as long as the team's winning, that will lead to success. But to me, that's easier said than done. Like, I think it's just human nature to want to do more, to want to prove yourself more. I think it's particularly in DiVincenzo's situation, signing as a free agent, and then Grimes' situation with the extension coming up. So it's a team dynamic. You're dealing with human beings. But I do think what you've seen from those three throughout their history is they will be bought in. You're not going to hear grumbling about minutes as long as things are going well.
I think what you just mentioned on the extension is,
Yep.
I don't think that's a problem for him because I think Thibodeau loves him. I think that's Quickly is the kind of guy who doesn't seem to be bothered by it, but that is a consideration that those guys are playing for contracts, Quickly and Grimes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Quick promo to break things up. We are now a podcast. We're on podcast form. So if you don't catch us on video, you can get us on podcast. You can get that wherever you download your podcast, the Putback Now podcast form. If you don't want to see this on your screen, you can just go podcast. It's a lot easier. Jonathan, Jalen Brunson, 8 games. Knicks are 4-4. He's done what he's done. What are you seeing from him?
Probably the most surprising thing of the season to me is Brunson. His overall efficiency is not terrible, but that's because he's hitting, again, absurd numbers from 3. He hit, I think, 5 of 8 last night. He obviously had 8 of 12, I think, in the Atlanta game. He's had some other nice shooting games from 3. He's shooting under 40% from 2-point range right now. I think I checked that earlier today, which is not something I thought that Jalen Brunson was capable of doing. And it's weird because coming off of FIBA, I think there were maybe a couple different mindsets. Some people thought, all right, Jalen Brunson's going to come in and hit the ground running because he doesn't need to ramp up. And then there maybe now is another mindset that what if he's a little tired? I don't know what it is. Early in the season, I thought maybe he was making a little bit too much of an effort to get other guys involved and couldn't quite handle the pass shoot balance, trying to do too much, maybe, so to speak. The last several games, I feel like he's getting to his spots. He's looks assertive. The shots just maybe aren't going down. He'll still be fine. He's Jalen Brunson. I have zero doubt about that. He's going to be okay. But it's been a little odd to see him missing a bunch of shots this year that he made pretty consistently last season.
Just to speak to the conditioning quickly, Steve, it was strange, I thought, with the preseason, the way the Knicks approached it. I get what they were trying to do, ramp him up to big minutes and not throw him out there for 25-plus minutes for every preseason game. It's almost like the NFL starting quarterback not playing a lot in the preseason. But I think that kind of threw Jalen off, just my guess, my observation, because you put him out there for that last preseason game against Washington, and I thought he looked gassed at some points in those games. So his level of conditioning, his level of being able to get up and down the floor, I don't think was where the Knicks and he would have wanted it to be going into game 1 of the regular season.
Yeah, just a side point to that is him and Josh Hart were kind of treated that way. And R.J. Barrett, who we talked about the workload that he takes and the work that he's willing to put in, he played with Team Canada in FIBA and just never seemed to get want a break, or he played big minutes, the 3 games that he played. So it's kind of strange. But anyway, I agree with you guys. I don't worry about Jalen at all. The one concern, I guess, is we tried to, Stephen Bondi was trying to pry on it yesterday in 10 different ways, and he never will admit it. But there's something with his hand. He's got it taped up, and he just said he tripped and fell and re-aggravated it, but he won't say what it is, won't say what the injury is, just said, I'll be fine next game over and over again, which is what he always says. And he'll play through it. Is it something that's deterring him a little bit? Maybe. I don't know. But again, I don't worry about him. I think that low shooting percentage around the rim is going to change. He's hitting threes. He's getting guys involved. I think he's going to be fine.
Yeah, agreed. And on the injury front, he's like Derek Jeter. Like, he's just never going to tell you if he's hurt. Yeah. Says the right thing. For Met fans like David Wright, just the messaging is always good, as we said earlier. But let's move over to we're going from number 11 to number 30, Julius Randle, a player that has been a topic of discussion. He's always a topic of discussion, win, lose, or draw. Struggled with his shot early on. Last 2 games, to me, it's been a different story. John, are you concerned about Julius's shooting? Were you after the first 6 games? Kind of where are you on him?
To me, in a kind of a different way than like Steve just said, Jalen Brunson's like Jalen Brunson. Like Julius is Julius. I think we've seen enough of him. This is year 10 now for him, I think, in his career. He's going to have ups, he's going to have downs, and the downs are going to be rough, and they're often going to come not with just, missed shots, but, questionable effort things occasionally and seemingly getting in his own head when it comes to, passing versus shooting versus stopping and complaining to the ref. It's part of the package. You hope to minimize it as much as possible. All that being said, last 2 games, extremely encouraging. I think he's getting downhill more. I think he's making quicker decisions. I love that they are, and DJ Zulo and Benji Ritholtz here at KFS have been pointing this out a lot, getting him and Mitch involved in big pick and rolls, because the biggest impediment that Julius has to being an efficient offensive player around the rim with the Knicks is they don't employ a stretch 5. So how do you handle that? Well, get the big man up setting the pick and have both of those guys rolling downhill. So then you either get Julius with a good look or give Julius a lob attempt, which you've seen him lob it to Mitch, or worst case scenario, Julius misses, someone's there to clean up his miss and put it back. So I like that stuff, but ultimately it comes down to Julius, again, making good decisions, quick decisions, and I think he's been doing that certainly more over the last few games.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I like how you snuck that promo in. I love listening to Benji and DJ break the game down. It's a fun listen. You got to check that out if you haven't already. Knicks Film School. So, Steve, Julius, you've been around him so much since he's come to New York. Where are you at? Like, do you think he's struggling? Because the first 6 games, you think he's evened out. Where are you?
I don't. There's another guy I don't worry about. I think he's going to have his numbers at the end of the year. He had a different kind of off season because of the injury, the surgery. Guys, it's sort of what RJ went through last summer, where they don't do the work they normally do. Maybe not shooting, not on the court enough. I think that'll come. The one gripe I'd have with him again is, I think Jonathan mentioned it. Thibodeau likes to say when you're not scoring, when you're not shooting, you can help in other ways. And sometimes you see the shoulders slump and the defensive effort is just not there, and you wish it would get called out or yanked out of a game. I wrote a column the other day and said, he's carrying around that Be Like Water book from Bruce Lee. Might be time for a different book, something a little more intense. I just think that's what you need is the hard-nosed Julius. And you've been getting it offensively. You've been getting it rebounding. You just want to see it defensively. That I think is the next big step that would make this team, what can elevate them. That I think could elevate them because he has the skill to do it.
Yeah.
For what that guy's been through from the fan base from 2019 to now, I mean, I think he's pretty mentally tough for him to still be here. I would be cowering in Coney Island somewhere, like under a box. I wouldn't be able to deal with it mentally. He's handled it. It's come out in some bad ways sometimes, but I give him credit for sticking with it and being who he is and doing what he's doing, faults included. So, guys, I want to go to Matt Spendley again because I think he has a few questions.
Here I come. I do have a fan question. My fan question is for Steve specifically. It's from our guy, David Feudernick on YouTube. He says, first time, long time. My question is for Steve. You have to pick one Knicks beat writer, past or present, to live on a desert island with. Who do you pick? I'll hang up and listen.
I know who he wants, but I'm not giving it to him. I'm gonna go with Ian. He's here, and I know there would be food around. He's pretty mellow. I know he'd mostly be sleeping under a tree somewhere, but I think we can make it work.
Good pick.
On his own. I think that's
what I knew. That's what he wants.
That was his first one he listed. Actually, he said Ian Zone, Berman, Begley. Those were his 3 ones that he listed as the main options.
Definitely not Berman. I'm happy to be a couple thousand miles away from him.
How long would you last with Berman before you give it a chance with the Sharks instead?
Would it be that I have the Sharks or that I send him to the Sharks?
That's great.
Berm, we love you. I would split a room with you for couple of days. That's for sure.
And Butter Nick, we love too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Shout out to Buddy.
I have had a beer. I have had a beer with him in LA.
Oh, nice. I'm jealous. I saw him in Vegas actually once. I'd like to hang with him again.
Great actor.
Absolutely. Anyhow, we talked about the young guys, the player development, and how they're playing well. The flip side of that coin is they're also increasing their trade value. I know, some Knicks fans are probably sick of the trade stuff, talking about this big trade that should happen. I think it's going to happen. You heard ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski last night kind of saying what we've been saying for a while now. They're well positioned, right, to get involved in a trade for a big star player. They tried on Donovan Mitchell. It didn't work out for whatever reason. They'll be in on the next guy, depending on who it is and what the fit is. So that's just a reality of where this team is. The idea of trading one of RJ or Mitchell Robinson or Emmanuel Quickley or Quentin Grimes, John, how does that sit with you in terms of where this team is and where you think it could go, this iteration?
I mean, it's a $64,000 question, right? NBA history is what it is, and NBA history says you need one of those guys, to win it all, or to really say that you're in it. And look, obviously some few exceptions, and I can't tell you how many times that I will get subscribers or readers reach out to me and be like, why can't this iteration become its own version of the 2004 Pistons? It's always the one people go to who didn't have a quote unquote superstar player. Well, they had a lot of Hall of Famers on their team and a lot of all-star caliber players. So but that's the exception and not the rule. I think you nailed it, Ian, when you just said it really is going to come down to fit with what star is it. But at the same time, you guys know how the NBA works. When you've taken the path that Leon Rose has taken and you're kind of banking on that star trade, you don't get to pick and choose. The trade presents itself and it's either, okay, we're willing to pony up or we're not. I don't see a way that they make that eventual trade if it comes to their doorstep without giving up at least one of the players you mentioned, and in no likelihood multiple ones. So I'll just say it's a tough question, and I'll punt it back to you guys because I don't have a great answer right now. The vibes feel great right now, but is that what your ceiling outcome is?
Yeah, I'm going to cut in just to ask you guys your final thoughts, and I'll offer mine. My question to you guys on the final thoughts is, as we get to December 15th, where do you see this team? Is it the team that you saw for the first 6 games where it was up and down, or is it the team you saw the last 2 games? Where do you think the group will shake out as you get to the middle of December when the trade season really picks up?
I think they're going to be fine. I think it's like last year. I think I predicted them for the same number of wins as last year, and I think some of the early stuff we saw offensively is going to fix itself. But I do think that look, I'm not going to pretend that I understand the CBA because I wouldn't be on talking to you, Ian. If I did, I'd have some much higher job in the NBA. But I do know that look, if you want to make one of these deals, these salary cap, crazy deals, you got to make it really probably mid-season this year. I think they have chips in place that they want to use. Evan Fournier, bless him, is sitting on the bench just as a trade chip. I think that they're going to have to make a decision on quickly. They certainly have enough pieces that they can afford to move them. I think Joel Embiid seems pretty happy right now without James Harden, so I'm not sure that's the way they go. If they go for a big man, Mitchell could be in a deal. I think they have a lot of pieces that you can kind of configure in different ways. These draft picks, I think if you're gonna make a move that's going to be cap restrictive, I think it's going to come during the season before that new CBA takes effect, and it's sort of that patient move they've had. Well, now they're going to have to eventually pull the trigger here or decide this is how they're going to live, and extend these guys, beyond this for a long time to go. And I don't think that's the way they're planning on it.
I think they'll be probably a few games over 500, 2, 3, maybe even more games over 500 around that. It's the 24 game mark. They have a tough schedule, play some tough road games. As far as the trade stuff, it's hard because assuming they're playing well when trade season starts, we have yet to see this regime trade out a good player who is contributing to winning in season, in a trade. It's always, so, or at the very least, like if they're going to make a trade this season and they're playing well, they're only going to do it if it's an upgrade. So then, okay, well, what kind of an upgrade can you make? I don't think you're going to bring in another high usage guy. And if you're talking upgrade, it's going to be a high usage guy, right? Without sending out a high usage guy, because there's one ball, right? And we're already talking about it. Like Quentin Grimes already can't get enough shots. So you're thinking, all right, is it a 2-for-1? Because as Steve just said, like they have the pieces, Fournier's salary, whatever. And then it's like, okay, if you're bringing in another high usage guy, does that mean? What does that mean? Is Emmanuel Quickly going out to trade? I don't like that. I don't want to trade Emmanuel Quickly this season. I know that. And I'm just wondering, like, how good would a player have to be to come along where the Knicks are like, all right, we feel good about trading Quickly and maybe another one of our rotation pieces, plus maybe some draft capital, plus an Evan Fournier salary to bring in. Like, at that point, you're talking about a borderline all-star player. Is that player going to become available before the trade deadline? I don't know. So for as much as, look, they've made trades in 3 straight years that involve rotation players, I would probably take the under if it was like, 0.5 meaningful trades between now and the deadline. Famous last words, but that's what I would say.
Yeah, the one dilemma I think is that Quickly is worth more to almost anyone else than he is to the Knicks. Look, I don't blame him for chasing the money, and he should. He's probably earned it, but with the Knicks, he's never going to be a starter. Jalen Brunson plays 35 minutes a night. It's a tough situation, and there are definitely places in the league he can go and be a starter and get starter minutes and get starter production and starter money. But do the Knicks want to lock themselves into that with a guy who's going to be a 6th, 7th man for them?
Speaking of trades, Steve, I talked to the execs at Newsday. You are untradeable. You are totally off the table. You're too good. John, you're your own GM, so you're not trading yourself. You're all good. Don't worry about that. We really appreciate both of you guys jumping on with us, sharing your insights, putting up with my nonsense. Thank you, guys. We hope to see you guys back soon. But the Putback will certainly be back, I believe, 2 weeks from now. It'll be a Thursday around noon, and we'll be getting into everything Knicks and the NBA. We'll see you then.